Well, good afternoon. I am the Reverend M. Coley. I'm the National Young Vocations Officer, and I am delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you this afternoon about vocation and how we can encourage vocation in other people. I think I can safely say that this is not going to be a slick presentation. The technology is somewhat unfamiliar to me. However, I do intend, hopefully, to share my presentation with you so you can see what I'm talking about as I am talking. Here, therefore, is the presentation. And we start off simply by thinking about what it is that we want to get out of the seminar this afternoon. I have tried to cram about an hour and 15 minutes worth into about 10. So forgive me if it is a little bit rambling. What I want to talk about to start off with is your vocation and how you might share your vocation with others. By the end of today, this seminar, I would really hope that you have a clear sense of what your vocation is, what Bible verse you might attach to your vocation, and if you had to summarize it in a headline, what would that headline be? This is important for all of us as ordained ministers. If you were in front of me and I could ask you, the likelihood is that if I asked the question, how many of you were under 20 when you started thinking about getting ordained, many of you would put your hand up. And if I were to ask how many of you looked to a church leader for encouragement, most of you would put your hands up. Well, you are going to be that person. It's important, therefore, because you are the person, but it is important also because we know the importance of a role model, we know the importance of a mentor, and we know the importance of a cheerleader. A role model, somebody to look to set an example. A mentor, someone who is able to guide. A cheerleader, somebody who is able to say, keep going, you're doing brilliantly. So I'm wondering, what is your vocation story? I'm not going to tell you mine, it's too long. I wonder whether you can find some time today or over the next week to share with somebody what your vocation story is. Where did it start? Who was significant? Obviously, we know where it has got to at this stage. But if you could share your vocation story with somebody, that would be excellent. I wonder too, what is your theology on vocation? I'm going to suggest a number of Bible verses that I think are quite significant. In Amos, I am no prophet or a prophet's son, but the Lord took me from following the flock and said to me, go prophesy. It doesn't matter what your background is or what your skill set is. God can use you. Or what about a passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 1? Basically says that it doesn't matter if you consider yourself to be wise or influential or even equipped. It's God that matters, and God is able to use anybody. This, I know, is a significant verse for many when thinking about vocation. Mary said, here I am, the servant of the Lord, let it be with me according to your word. When I was a DDO in the St Albans diocese, I had one candidate for whom this was particularly significant. Her vocation story started with a question, "Really, Lord, how can this be?" and ended with a surrender, a willingness. I think this verse is really significant for young people. Jeremiah saying to God, Lord God, I don't know how to speak. I am only a boy. And the Lord saying, do not say I am only a boy, because you will go to whom I send you and you will speak whatever I command you. Very often with young people thinking about their vocation, there is a lack of confidence in their abilities. And yet this points us and them back to God. And then I would say, this is my verse. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to give you hope and a future. This has been a significant verse since I was in my teens, a promise of God that he will always be with you. I'm wondering then, what is your vocation theology? What is the verse that has meant a lot to you over the years? I wonder if you could just take a moment to scribble down what that verse is, and we can add to our vocation story a Bible verse. And I wonder too, if you were to summarize your vocation in a headline, what would it be? What would that headline be? Tabloid or broadsheet, it doesn't matter, but what would your headline about your story, how God has called you to ordination or to be a lay minister, what would that be? I think it's probably worth jotting down that as well, and you can refer back to that. Well, my role, as I said at the beginning, is to be the National Young Vocations Officer. And part of my role has been to learn about millennials. Well, I think millennials in general get rather a bad press. I was at a dinner party not long ago, and I was rather dismayed to hear millennials being called snowflakes and butterflies. And it did make me wonder, what is it, our propensity to call people names? What I have learnt about millennials, I think we can say, is a generalization, and there is always going to be the exception to the rule. Maybe you know millennials, maybe you are a millennial yourself. Maybe you object to the generalizations about generations. What I have found is that actually they can be really very helpful as we try to understand other people from a different generation to ours. This is a quote here that you can read on the screen from a book by Amy and Frog or Ewing. The millennials love intensity, conviction, truth, passion, friendliness, holiness, rules, safety, old people, justice, and inclusion. What a wonderful way to counter the names that millennials are called. What I would really like to encourage you to do is read a book, a Grow booklet. So a short book called Engaging Generation Y, Leading Well Across the Generations. This is the Grove book. The really good news is not just it's a Grove booklet, but also that I'm going to email it to James and make it available. Therefore, we have it in PDF form. You can read it for free. But please do read it. I found this a really helpful booklet, giving an insight into how this generation operates, and also some of their tips as to how we might work alongside people of different generations. I also read another book in which a Rabbi Laura, writes something that I was really struck by. She says, this book sets an example of what we need to see more of. Young religious leaders given the chance to share their experience and what is important to them. The most important work people like me in positions of supposed authority can do is listen. I was really struck by that, because it does make me think that in the church hierarchy, we just need to make sure we are listening to millennials. They come from a generation that is more different to any generation that's gone before them than any of the other generations. So how about we stop and listen in a way, in an effort to understand? And then this is the question. I don't think you can see it fully, but it says, what does millennial culture suggest about millennials engaging with their vocation? I would love for you to go away and think about this, maybe discuss it in groups if you have that opportunity. But engage with the question, think about the question, think about what your answer would be. When you know about millennial culture, what does that mean about their vocation? And as we've thought about it in the past, we thought about an app, the millennial love of technology, an app helping to people, young people, to engage with the church. The church needing to be seen as a movement rather than simply a job, a movement for justice, a movement following the example of Jesus. And can we affirm rather than question or dismiss millennials coming forward with a sense of what their vocation might be? That has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour thinking about vocation. I would just want to reiterate, though, that as church leaders, new church leaders going into the church, it is a great opportunity for you to speak to people who are also thinking about their vocation and help them to think about what it is to be obedient to God and to do what God might be calling them to do. And quite often a starter for this would be for you to be able to talk about your own story, your theology, your headline. And there is something really important about understanding. We may well be talking to people who are not the millennial generation, but when we are, how can we understand their own generation? Well, as I say, that Grove booklet is a really good thing to read, to give us some headlines, some general headlines about how we might engage with the millennial generation. Well, I do hope this has given you some food for thought. I hope too you have an opportunity to talk with others remotely, of course, about all of this. But please do just remember the significance of other church leaders in encouraging us. We're now in that position. We are the church leaders. So how do we encourage vocation in others?